There you go. Brand new stuff from the band Rexx, R-E-X-X, and that's called Need a Little Lovin'. And we want to thank Jonni Lightfoot for being a part of the Classic Metal Show tonight. Are you coming down off your high yet, Mr. Aiken?
I am. That was good.
What are you doing? Are you distracted over there?
No, I just had the mic off.
Right.
If I went up and got a beer, but if I turn the speakers on, with the new setup, I mean, it'll
feed back.
It'll just
exactly. Yep.
Just immediately.
Yeah.
It just feeds back really hard. So, I have to turn the mic off when I turn the headphones on.
Sure.
Or when I turn the monitors on.
Absolutely. We got a call here. Hail and Kill caller, you're on the air.
Am I on the air?
You are on the air.
Yeah, this is Desi Rexx talking to you from Salt Lake City. What's up, guys?
I thought we were going to call you, man, but that's cool. You saved me having to dial 10 digits.
Well, I saw a missed call. I thought I might as well try it back. Is this Indiana call?
Yes, it is.
Indiana's very close to my hometown of Chicago.
Well, I'm right outside there, Desi. I mean, I know your former drummer Billy pretty well.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, he's been here at the Classic Metal Show studio when he was promoting his Devilish Shakespeare.
Oh, yeah. He's an author these days. Nice.
Yeah. So, anyway, Desi, first time here on the Classic Metal Show. Of course, we know Desi Rexx from the DeMauls and, now with Rexx and, other things that you've done. But this is the first time I've had you on the show, Desi. We've been doing this show for 20 years, and can you believe it? Somehow we've never got you corralled to be a guest on the show.
Well, you leave it to Jonni Lightfoot to pull that together. Who am I speaking with, by the way? Let me put a name to the voice.
Oh, well, this is Neely and my partner, Chris Aiken.
Hey, man.
Neely and Chris Aiken. Hey, Chris, what's up?
What's up, dude? How are you?
Well, I'm fine. I'm still here doing it. That's the big thing, isn't it? My mom used to say I woke up on the green side of the grass today. It's a good one.
Absolutely. Well, Desi, you've had a long history. Your band DeMauls kind of came out, kind of at the tail end of the 80s, and unfortunately didn't quite catch the fire of the guys who started that whole trend in the very early 80s. But that kind of launched your career into, being a commercial artist, I guess that's what I want to call it. And you haven't stopped, as you said, and you're still out there making music, still making noise. And you're working with Jonni Lightfoot, who we just got off the phone with here. And you're living in Salt Lake City, so I'm going to start right there. I asked Jonni this, and he said, I'll let Desi answer this. How does a Desi Rexx end up in Salt Lake City?
There are so many things that you just opened up with that last statement. I don't know where to begin. Jonni is a very good friend, actually, and I'll see how we got together in a minute. Can I give you is this the 45 version or the studio cut? Is this the AOR?
Dude, you could stay with us till 2 a.m. in the morning if you like. We got all night, so go right ahead.
Let me see what kind of battery rot on this gizmo I'm talking to you on. I'm using headphones, which I think puts me on speakerphone. Is it coming through clear enough?
You sound great.
Yeah, thank you. There's like very little left in my ears, so I put headphones on for stuff like this, and it works out a whole lot better. So what I'll do, I'll back up, and what Jonni said is, don't be shy. I hate self-promotion. I've always hated self-promotion. And that's why I've kind of laid low in many instances and opportunities. But Jonni said, you know what, dude, just let them know the story and the backstory on all this stuff. So I think I will start with getting into it in the late 80s. Actually, I moved out to Los Angeles in the early 80s. And unless somebody can prove different, I think maybe I started the West Coast glam scene. Now, nobody argues with the New York Dolls starting up glitz, glitter, glam, cross-dress, and all that kind of stuff on the East Coast. But the big difference was they're ugly, and actually most of them are dead. So we got that main difference. I had a band called St. Valentine, And that band is not the one that ended up making a record under that name, but the St. Valentine I speak of was myself and Lizzie Gray, who had a band called London with a guy named Frankie Ferrano, who changed his name to Nicky Six and went off with Motley Crue and did very well. What was picked as the single for that first Too Fast for Love record was a track called Public Enemy Number 1. And that was co-written by Lizzie Gray, and I'll leave that at that. Lizzie ended up spinning it nicely over time into London, 13 different versions of that one, and St. Valentine with myself and a guy named Gary Bushnell, who was a bass player. He got replaced. He had a Tom Peterson bass at the time, and I'll kind of get back to that. He was replaced by a guy named Donnie Cameron on bass and a drummer named Nigel Itzen. In a later version of St. Valentine, Pete Comita jumped on board as a guitar player, and one of my funniest stories was when Pete Comita was a guy that replaced Tom Peterson in Cheap Trick, and Pete Comita had been one of the original guitar players in a band called The Thumbs, and yes, I got the D apostrophe for Demals from The Thumbs. Pete was a dear friend of mine. The Thumbs were made up of Pete Comita and a guy named Cliff Johnson, who later went on to do Off-Broadway. That's a big Chicago deal. John Brandt was a bass player who later went on to replace Pete Comita in Cheap Trick. And it's a pretty funny story to hear Pete tell it. Pete never really did drive. He was just a rock star and got driven everywhere, including to the Cheap Trick rehearsals. At the time that Tom Peterson was out of Cheap Trick, that period of time, Tom and I were friends in L.A. and went out with girls who were pals of one another. And I remember being at Roy Thomas Baker's 40th birthday party. Roy was a producer. He did a lot of Queen records. He did the Cars records. He worked with Cheap Trick on an album or two. And at his 40th birthday, Roy Thomas Baker had blue hair and a clear Vista-Lite grand piano in his house, and we went out, and I was sitting with Bob 1 and Bob 2 of Devo, and we went to Roy's birthday party, and Rick Nielsen was running around like a maniac with his baseball hat on, of course, and Robin Zander was crying in the corner, and Robin was also an acquaintance of mine. I don't want to say friend. I don't know if I'd call him to bail me out of jail, but he was certainly an acquaintance. And Robin was crying in the corner, and he had had a couple of cocktails, and I went over and I said, "Robin, what is the matter?" And he's, "Oh, I miss Tommy so much. Oh, I wish I could get Tom back in the band, blah, blah, blah." I had been palling around with Tom. We'd go with our girls out shopping on Rodeo Drive and all that. And Tom was itching to get back into Cheap Trick, and for whatever reason, they couldn't quite get it together. They just, I guess pride, whatever the case was, they couldn't make that call, or didn't think the other one wanted him back anymore, or whatever. And I said, "Well, I tell you what, you got John Brandt at this point. I got Pete Comita and St. Valentine. I want John on bass. Why don't you dump him and I'll get Tommy back in Cheap Trick for you?" And he said, "Oh, he'd never do it. He'd never do it." I said, "He would. We hang all the time. He wants back in. He does." And I always kind of felt like I had a little something to do with getting the original lineup of Trick back together with that one, moment. It was just, you could see it was an epiphany for Robin. Like, Tom really would like back in. He had a wacko wife named Dagmar that he'd already dumped by then, and she was a Swedish model. She was about 12 feet tall. "Tom, you don't need Cheap Trick." She had a voice that was lower than mine. "You can, you can be a star on your own." And Tom fell for it. I don't think he was thinking with his upper brain, and bailed on Trick and tried a little solo career around L.A. It didn't really pan out for him. But then he got back in, and things have been smooth for years, so that was a neat deal. At any rate, Pete Comita had kind of a bizarre reputation. He's a great, great songwriter. He probably wrote at least half a dozen songs that I know of that were on various Cheap Trick records. And at that time, it's not really unusual for people to buy songs. I'm not saying that Rick doesn't write great songs. He writes great songs, but sometimes you hit a dry period or you just hear a great track that you want on your record. And so depending on the deal that you do with somebody, you might give them X amount of money and they have a co-writer. You might give them more money and you buy the song. And I don't think it would be nice of me to kiss and tell, which songs they are, but Pete made a very good living for a while selling songs to Cheap Trick. And then eventually when they needed a bass player, he was their first choice. They had been big The Thumbs fans. And I don't know if you guys even know who that was, but The Thumbs were really a cool band. They, I remember they did a show where they opened up for a band called Black Oak, Arkansas. Do you know who that was? Black Oak?
Yeah, we know. What was the lead singer there? The Jim Dandy.
Yeah, Jim Dandy Mangrum.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim Dandy was quoted at one time when Dave Roth was on his way up, and if you remember, and of course I played guitar for Dave later, that there's a real classic shot of Dave where he's got kind of higher heels, not high heels, not Nicky Six stilettos, but kind of higher heels, and he's leaning in a back bend, and he's way back when he's got that great hairy chest and his microphone. He's got a belt on with a star on it, and, bare-chested, of course, and his hair is 12 feet long, touching on the ground. Do you know that shot I'm talking about, or no?
Yeah, absolutely. That everybody says that David Lee Roth basically stole his whole look and shtick from Jim Dandy.
It wouldn't be right to say his shtick, and I've got plenty to tell you about Dave, at least the things that I didn't sign a non-disclosure. When you work for Dave, you sign a contract, and in it is certain secrets have to stay secret, secret recipes to M&Ms and things like that. So I'm not going to be able to chat about that, but there's plenty that I can talk about, and kind of like a prenup, the things before, I was married to Dave, I can chat about, and I happen to know a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. And Dave is unbelievable. Dave is he's the very best. Well, I don't know. I think maybe I'm giving him a run for the money these days, but even in those days,
I think I'd give him a run for the money these days. Jeez.
Well, you know what? It's so funny that people say that stuff about Dave. They don't know the guy. Yeah, he's a maniac. Yeah, he's an egomaniac, all that stuff. But there's nobody that I know that put more time. Everybody thinks, I'm a rock star, or you see somebody and you think, oh boy, but they just luck. Preparation meets opportunity. That's the definition, of luck. And right. Dave worked so hard. I don't know what things have come out in his book, and I don't want to waste time with stories that are already well known. But while Eddie and Alex, and Michael Anthony's actually a Chicago guy or a suburb guy, they had a little band called Mammoth, and it was a three-piece band. And if you go back far enough, Eddie, who, by the way, was a producer of a band called Private Life, and Private Life was Danny Johnson, and Danny is my buddy from way back in Rexx and Johnson, and we had, Ringo's kid, Starkey, was our drummer in Rexx and Johnson, and that's I don't know where to stop or start on this stuff. At any rate, while those guys were painting curb addresses in California, the Van Halen brothers, in the early days, Alex was the guitar player, lead singer, and Eddie was the drummer. Did you know that?
No.
Yep. Eddie Van Halen was the drummer. Exactly. When they were real young kids, they had a little two-piece band or whatever they were doing, and Alex was the front man, singer, guitar player. Eddie was the drummer. And when their dad, Jan Van Halen, who was a pretty good musician himself, Dutch guy, he bought Eddie, and Alex instruments for Christmas one year. And when Alex saw that big, shiny drum set and all that chrome, he pounded the snot out of Eddie, who was his younger brother. And if you've ever seen them side by side, he's not just a year or two older. He's got him by about 6 inches and about 40 pounds. And he became the drummer. He was jealous. He wanted the drums, so Alex got the drum set, and Eddie got stuck having to learn how to play guitar. He was trained on piano, and so that sort of two-finger thing that he does, two-hand thing, kind of came naturally to him, and the rest of it's kind of history. So while Mammoth is doing their thing, Dave Roth, who is, Jewish, but I don't mean it badly, he is, and he's a businessman. He's the son of a businessman. Dave's father was an ophthalmologist. I don't even know if he's alive anymore, but he was an ophthalmologist, and he had the contract for doing the surgery for, not glaucoma, but like cataract surgery, for all the prisoners in California, with the government footing the bill. Yet another reason why they're broke, I think, isn't Illinois now broker than California, if I heard right, or no?
Yeah, pretty close.
Yeah, but anyway, they're giving him a run for the non-money, right? For the owed money. anyway, the economy is good here in SLC. It's one of the reasons Desi got out. But anyway, Dave's father was an ophthalmologist, and he had this contract and had plenty of dough, and was a very shrewd businessman. And Dave, coming up on the scene, hanging out in L.A. and everything, in Hollywood in those days, thought that a good way to make money was to buy a PA system. Now, do you know any of the? I mean, is any of this stuff well known? I really don't want to tread ground that's been.
Well, I think a lot of the VH1 Behind the Music episodes covered a lot of this.
Okay, well then let's not go there. Dave bought a PA system. Mammoth was tired of renting. They asked him if he could sing. Dave, in his usual, of course I can. I'm the best singer on planet Earth. He took a bunch of lessons. He took ballet lessons. He took dance and karate. And he's got the biggest joke. His joke book is 3 times bigger than Bob Hope's. I remember a particular rehearsal we were doing in a studio. We were in rehearsal. The lore has it that I was in Dave's band for about 2 weeks. I was with Dave for nearly a year. And we had about 6 months of rehearsals going. And in one of the phases of rehearsal, we started out in his basement, and Jose was building our amps, and I was using Eddie's old guitar, and then we went on to a theater that was being renovated in Pasadena, and Dave is obviously hometown hero, and so we had these rehearsals going there for months. And in one particular evening, he said, "All right, guys, we're going to have a dress rehearsal tonight." So we all got dressed, and he gave us all $1,000 and went out and got some cool clothes or whatever. And we did a show in a 2,000-seat place, about a little smaller than the Aragon, I'd say. And there was one guy in the audience, about 10 rows back, and we did the show, and we'd been rehearsing it for months, and we did it exactly the way we do it. And all of a sudden, we stopped. And Dave said, "Okay, take 5, And I saw him sitting out there with the guy, and they're nodding and shaking their head and looking at the notebook and everything. And Dave pops back up. He goes, "Okay, let's do the set again." We did the set again, and it was ever so slightly different. I mean, just a little bit different. Basically, the time between the songs and the jokes and the next songs. And afterward, I said, "Who was that guy, Dave?" And he says, "Oh, that's my comedy writer." So, I mean, Dave has every base freaking covered. He owned 40 radio stations, and so he'd immediately have a bullet, He'd put the word out, get a new song going. He's got 40, Anyway, the guy is
no
dummy.
He really did that?
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, I'm telling you got to appreciate the business acumen of a guy like Dave Roth. He's not to be laughed at, he's to be admired. His father loaned him the money. They set a particular interest rate. "Dad, I want to buy a PA system because there's this stuff called rock and roll happening in Hollywood, and I think I can make some dough renting PAs to these bands that pay to play." And so his dad said, "Okay, how much? How much interest? Okay, well, they strike a deal." And he loaned him the dough. Dave bought a PA system, paid his dad back in no time, and Mammoth got so sick of renting from him, they asked him if he knew how to sing. And Dave, as I said, "Yeah, sure," and he got up there. And Dave used to stand like a stick in the mud. Now, I don't know how much of this stuff was VH1 or not. And, I'm trying to not double it, but
let me go back a little bit, Desi. You're saying that David Lee Roth's dad is the reason that David became David?
I don't know what I'm saying. I'm saying that Dave's dad loaned him some money to buy a PA system, and he paid his dad back like a good businessman would. And while he was doing that, he ended up in a band called Mammoth, who had already changed drummer and guitar positions. They were tired of it. Eddie was the front man. He's a great guitar player, and he's a really great backup singer, and he's actually a good lead singer as far as hitting the notes. But he doesn't have that pizzazz, and Dave is a freaking show. Not the best voice in the world, but certainly a signature sound. And so then he's in the band, and I'm telling you, the guy was a stick in the mud, and Alex said, "Dave, you look great. You're boring as all get out, and if I can hit you in the back of the head with the drumstick at any time, I'm going to do it." Dave thought he was kidding, after getting walloped 5 or 6 times and getting the knot in the back of his, Dave started jumping around like a maniac. And, Alex was the impetus behind Dave's sort of stage mania in the early days. And then once he was off and running and got the reaction from it, you don't need much more than a crowd clapping to know you're on the right track. And so Dave ran with it. But
who would you say was more influential, Desi? Would you say that it was Alex Van Halen or David Lee Roth's dad?
Well, I'd probably give them equal credit in the team picture. I'd put them both up front.
I see. Definitely.
That's. Go ahead. You got a question? If you got a question, I got an answer, and if you don't have a question, I got answers anyway. Anyway, well, here.
I'm learning everything there is to know about Van Halen.
Well, very good. One of the things that I always like best about those guys. Well, here's one for you. So there's a guy named Max, and he is a guitar maker extraordinaire. Pete Baronet, but Max Baronet. If you get online, you'll find out who Max is. And for instance, Slash's famous 1960 Les Paul or 59 Les Paul is not a 59 Les Paul. It's a Max. Max makes the very best guitars on planet Earth. When Gibson decided to reissue the Les Paul, the 58, 59, 60s, they called Max and asked him to come in and head the department. And Max was the best man at my wedding some years ago. Max is my very, very dear friend. And he is he's a kind of an interesting guy. He's an artist in his own right, absolutely. And Max would be, he'd build guitars in Hollywood for a while, then he'd just have too much of the scene. He'd go be a short order cook in Bakersfield for 6 months, and he'd come back and get another, handful of it. And at one point, he was doing his thing, and there's like some 16-year-old pimply-faced kid in there getting his guitar strings changed in his shop or whatever. And Eddie rolls up on the curb in his little Porsche, and they're making the second record down at Gold Star, and Eddie blasts in and shoves the kid out of the way, puts his guitar on the counter, and says, "Max, you got to fix this thing. It's buzzing, man. We're recording it, blah, blah, blah." Max says, "Who the bleep do you think you are walking in my shop? Get the bleep out of here and go get me a blinking, 6-pack of beer and make it Schaefer Light," which is like the cheapest, trashiest beer of all time. And Eddie looks at him like, "What?" He says, "I'm not kidding, Eddie. Get out of here." And Eddie gets out with his tail between his legs, runs down to the local 7-Eleven, buys a 6-pack of Schaefer Light, brings it back to Max, who in the meantime has finished tuning the guitar for the 16-year-old kid who now thinks Max is the biggest hero in the world, and incidentally, I do too. Eddie comes back in and he says, "Hey, man, I can appreciate you're making a record, but this is how I make my business. This is how I make my living. Don't ever come in and do that again. Here, I fixed the guitar. It's on the house. Go make a good record. Get out of here."
Wow. And that's how you ended up in Utah.
No, that's not how I ended up in Utah. That's how I ended up in the first letter U in Utah.
Sure.
So later on, I'm in this band with Danny Johnson. Do you know who that is or no? Danny Johnson?
No, don't know Danny Johnson.
So Danny was a guitar player in Derringer way back. And he had his own band, Axis, and then Derringer, then Alice Cooper, then Rod Stewart, then Alice Cooper, and that's another. I could go off for another 10 minutes on that whole thing.
Please do.
Anyway, really?
Yes.
Okay. When the motor mouth goes too long, tell me to change a tire and we'll shift gears. So Danny is this friend of mine, and I remember seeing him the first time in White Sox Park. In the 70s, they had a thing called, what was that called? Grand Slam of Rock or something. And Aerosmith was leading way. Derringer was the second act on the bill. Jeff Beck was on there, Gary Wright, I think. And while Jeff Beck was playing, I've always liked Jeff anyway. I know Jeff a little bit. And I always thought that he was just so cool under pressure. And while he was playing in White Sox Park, somebody lit a fire in like the bleachers, and it's burning. And Jeff just he's got his, turquoise and silver wristband. He looks over to his guy, gives a little shake of the head, and they look over there and they're watching it burn. He just keeps on playing. And so there was, I think there were 65,000 people that time. It was all the seating, the whole infield, everything, and then the stage set up. It was really a cool show. Sure. Aerosmith was at the top of their first game. They came back strong with permanent vacation, but in their first run, they were really great. And so Derringer had this great band. Derringer kind of came from Johnny Winter and Edgar Winter and all that stuff. And so Danny Johnson had been in a band called Axis with a drummer named Vinny Appice, and that's Carmine Appice's kid brother.
Right.
And Carmine, of course, right, yeah. So Vinny grew up to do Dio, and he grew up later on. He was in, what the heck was he in after that? I can't remember right now. Anyway, Vinny's in,
he was in Heaven and Black Sabbath.
Three-Legged Dog?
That's right. Listen, that is so funny that you say that. I forgot that he played in Black Sabbath. Doggone it. You know, my left ear has been shot for a million years. Ronnie Dio was my very, very good friend. I remember being at Sound City. Now Dave Grohl bought the whole Sound City thing. You know, he did that whole thing with Paul McCartney and all that.
Sure.
At any rate, we used to rehearse at Sound City in a room next to Motley Crue. So Motley and us we'd be doing it, and Ronnie Dio would be over here with his band going. And I remember talking to Nikki Sixx one time. We lived in the same apartment complex. Billy may have told you this story. But Billy and I were in a band together, and Nikki and everybody but Mick lived in an apartment right across the hall from us. And I remember at that time, I was never going to stay long in that band with Billy. I told those guys when I first got to L.A., they said, we need a guitar player. I said, I need a place to sleep. I'm tired of my van. And we struck a deal for a while. So here I am, and I bump into Nikki, and Motley is not broken yet, but they're on the way up, and everybody could see that they were going to happen. And I just didn't get Mick Mars at the time. Now, since then, I know Mick. I like him. He's got some health issues going. I'm sorry. I wish him the very best. But at the time, and still, I really didn't get the fit. And so I say to Nikki, we're out by the pool, and I said, Nikki, why don't you dump, the Oompa Loompa and get Desi in the band? And he said, well, here's the deal. Will you do absolutely everything I say when I say it? You don't ever get to write any songs. Will you sing what I say, play what I say, that whole kind of thing? I said, no way. He said, well, then you can't be in Motley Crue, because that's what the position calls for. Okay. Well, very good. Good luck to you.
Wait a minute. So you're saying that you could have been the Vince Neil of Motley Crue?
No, guitar player. I do a little six string and also. I don't know how it would have worked out there. I think Vince was already in by then. They had a different singer originally, and at that time I think Vince was already in the band. That position was pretty well solid. But Vince and Nikki and Tommy were living in this, I think it was, I don't remember, 1014 Clark Street or something, right up from the Whiskey. Mm-hmm. We used to live right up there on Clark Street. And and the guitar player position wasn't quite solid yet. And, Mick was in, but he wasn't quite solid. But I just didn't like the idea. I always, I've got a lot to say, obviously, but I've got a lot to say musically, whether, I'm doing it with my voice or with my my guitar. And I just didn't want to be in a project where I didn't get to have any input. And Mickey really, had a vision for this thing. As I told you, Lizzie Gray and myself in St. Valentine. So there it is. So that's what I started to tell you. I'm sorry. Here we are back again. So
that's all right. Well, wait a minute. So aren't you glad, though, the way things all worked out? Because, man, if you'd have ended up in Motley Crue as the guitar player, you might be really sick now.
Well, you see, that's right. I hadn't thought about it that way. I like candy canes, but that's the only kind of canes I like. That's right. So I had this girl that I knew, Annie Henderling, and Annie was from the L.A. scene from way, way back, like Kim Fowley, the GTOs, not the Cherry Bombs, what were they called, Runaways, all that stuff. And she was pals with the Dolls way back. And so she had one of Johnny Thunder's old dresses. It was a pink sequin dress with kind of like a rhinestone silver cuffs and all that. And I saw it in her closet one time, and I thought, you know what? As Billy will tell you, we love listening to Judy Garland and laying back in lingerie and seeing what it was of a Saturday night. And I thought, if I could get my hands on that, and the whole thing hit me all at once, because I really did dig the New York Dolls. Musically, Trash was a pretty good one, In the Jungle. They had a couple of decent songs, but their shock value was unbeatable. I think that's probably 74, 75. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And like Mick was glitzy. I remember Jagger one time had his tooth routed out and had an emerald, a perfect emerald set in his tooth. The thing must have cost $100,000.
Wow.
And what he was doing, he wanted to be, the darling of the ball, and as he, and so he showed, and people would go, "Hey, Nick, what's that? You got spinach in your tooth? What is that?" And he was like, "Oh man," he finally had it taken out. And in the meantime, his partner Keith, of course, had no teeth. He'd fallen and broken them all out, smacked out. Do you know how far back Jagger and Richards go? This is another
at least
one
to the 40s.
well. Shoot, man! Right, they were 5 and 6 years old in a sandbox on the corner of their block that they lived in a poor part of. Those guys go way back.
What are your memories about that time?
About the 80s?
No, about when Mick and Keith got together.
Well, I was already in my late teens by then, so. Anyway, back to the dress. So Annie Henderling's got this dress, and I saw this thing, and the whole thing hit me in a flash. I thought, man, I know exactly what I want to do with this. And this is exactly at the same time there was an ice skating rink that was down on La Brea that Prince used to play at. In the middle of the ice skating rink, he would do shows. And he lived in this apartment complex, and he's about 5'2", and in his heels he's about 5'3". And
wow.
He had a cape and his makeup and all this kind of stuff. Prince is a little guy. He's a big freaking talent, but he's not he's diminutive,
Sure.
But huge talent. And at one point, I'm just letting this flow. I know there's not any continuity to it, but I think they're fun stories. My manager Jerry Tolman, Jerry was our manager for a while in DeMalt. Jerry had been a great guitar player. And he got an opportunity to audition for Thin Lizzy one time.
Okay.
And got the gig, was rehearsing up, ready to go on tour, and then Phil Lynott ODs, and so he never got his shot. Then Jerry ends up as a guitar tech for Stephen Stills. Then he became his road manager. Then he became his personal manager, and until the day Jerry died, God rest his soul, on a New Year's Eve just a couple of blocks away from his house. He was the nicest, sweetest soul ever. I remember him, he had lots of advice for me, and one of the things he said one time was, "Des, do you ever hit dry spots with your songwriting?" Mm-hmm. And the truth was then, and the truth is now, no, I don't. I'm always able to come up with something. But
not surprising.
He said, well, I don't know. It's just one of those things. There's some things that, I don't know. There's a lot of things I'm not so good at. I don't seem to run out of words either in phone conversations. Yeah, right. And if I put it on paper, it's easier for me to remember them. So hang on just a sec while I don't have a pencil. Let me bite off the tip of my finger and start writing in blood here. Hang on. Ow! Ooh. Anyway, so he said, you might consider, if you ever hit a dry spot, doing what Prince does. I said, what's that? He said, just for the discipline of it, Prince writes one song every day. Now, how's that?
That's a lot. How many? So now you write 2 every day, right, to counter his 1?
Well, what I'm trying to do is keep my notes here. I'm trying to write actually a song about this interview on that metal show. So, well, okay. Anyway, yes, no, I don't want to beat Prince. When I had Annie's dress, I was a princess for a while. But anyway, Prince is Prince. He's the best. Love him. Sure. Love you, Prince. But anyway, I saw this pink dress, and I thought, I know just what to do. If only the New York Dolls had been good looking. First they were a band, then they thought of their gimmick, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I thought of the gimmick, and I thought, you know what? What I got to do is get a great-looking band, and then do that thing and do it West Coast style. So London had been a little bit glitzy, but that's kind of glittery, not the drag deal. And so Lizzie Gray and I were talking about what should we do and all that, and this dress thing came up. And so at that time, the band didn't want to do it, but I knew it was going to be shock value. But right. the thing in my head was always, instead of being a sucky band like the Dolls, be a great band, and on top of it, have this gimmick.
Right.
Get it? That was going to be the rub. So we tried it, and I remember like the night Alex Van Halen got married, they came in to see us play at the Troubadour, and I had a wedding dress on, and I would wear this Johnny Thunders dress, and, one time, I think we opened up for Blackie and Wasp, and Blackie had gone through all this trouble to do a like a blood drive. It was on the Sunset Strip, and he had the American Cross out there. Did you ever hear about that show? Do you know about that thing?
I heard a little, but please tell me, expand.
Okay, expand if you will, Des. Okay,
sure.
Let's see. I'll get larger.
All right, good.
The idea was, thank you. Give me a cheeseburger, honey. I have to get larger for this show. So the idea is that they wanted to. When you give blood, you get a little woozy. Have you ever done it or no?
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, sometimes when I have to support my my weed habit, I have to sell a pint.
You sell a pint. What's your type these days?
Type O, pretty common.
Oh, is it? Yeah. Mine is still redheads with green eyes, but anyway, yeah. So you sell it. Well, I'm on the vampire side, so I'm actually on the take side of that. But give and take, yin and yang, it all works. So
yeah, right.
What Blackie figured out was that if you give blood, you're a little lightheaded, and maybe you're going to dig our show a little more. You're going to pass out a little more. We're going to get some buzz out of it, get some street, some press out of the deal. So he went through this great big deal to put together this blood drive. And if you gave a pint of blood, you got to come in for free. And in those days, he used to have this enormous pile of like raw meat in a bowl, and while they're doing their thing, he would eat the meat, the blood would be dripping down, he'd spit it out in the audience and all this. It was a pretty good gore deal.
Sure.
So, in fact, he and Lizzie Gray had been in a band called Sister Sister. You know about that one?
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
Right, yeah, and Lizzie's got Spiders and Snakes going these days and all that. So we have actually a song on the new Rexx record called Kissed Her Sister, and it's kind of a tip of the hat to that. We'll get to that in a little bit. At any rate, back to Blackie. So I thought, what we got to do is figure out a way to top Blackie, but let him foot the bill for it. So he's got this big thing going, and we come out, St. Valentine does, to open the show. And so I come out in a nurse's dress. I got nets in a nurse's dress, and I got the Red Cross hat on and the makeup and the whole deal. And Blackie almost came on stage to kill me for upstaging him. And I remember him saying later in some interview, he was like, I can't believe Desi do that to me. How could he, blah, blah, blah. So that was a fun night. So those were really fun days, really great. Everybody's trying to get an angle and figure what to do to be just a little bit bigger, a little bit better, a little bit taller, And
sure.
So Pete Comita, in his way, back to Pete and the Thumbs and all that,
right,
and Cheap Trick. And so he's out of Cheap Trick now because he had John Brandt give him a ride to rehearsal every day because he couldn't get it together enough to get his license out of Hawk or something.
Right.
And so he shows up. He's late. He doesn't get there. Finally, John, who was the bass player in Thumbs, just drives over to Rick Nielsen's house and says, Pete never made it. I don't know what the deal is. Just if you guys need to rehearse, I can play bass. And they said, yeah, okay. And so he ended up with the gig, and Pete was out. So now Pete's bumming out in Chicago, and he's living with his folks wherever they were, Park Ridge or something. And,
sure.
And so he's a good Italian first-generation kid, and his mom. And so I hear that he's available, and I phone him up from L.A., and I say, Pete, I got something called St. Valentine. We got a pretty good thing going here, a pretty good buzz around town. What are you doing? Oh, nothing, Des. Glad to hear from you. Yeah, I'd love to. I got no money. Can you send me a plane ticket? Sure, Pete, I'll send you a plane ticket. And Pete was always one, when people would say, oh, Pete, I heard you took like 2 Quaaludes last night, like 3 Quaaludes. He'd go, no, 14, and he'd always put it 25 times over the top. And it's a little irresponsible. Well, yeah, it's great, except when it's not true and you got kids looking up to you. Michael Jordan wants $38 gazillion and cut his thumb off because he's a gambler. Who knows what that whole thing is. But if you want that kind of money, you don't smoke a cigar when the kids are looking up to you as, I want to be like Mike. What do you want to do? A gambler? And, you know what I'm saying?
It's just bad, man.
Well, listen, man, that's how it is. Mike, if you're out there, you want that kind of money, you want to be a public figure, then don't say, I never wanted to be an example. Then don't take the paycheck. Okay?
That's what I'm saying.
Don't take the paycheck. That's what I'm saying. I love Jordan, and I love the fact that he would go out and play, street ball still, and he had the special contract and all that stuff. But you got to look out for the kids that admire you and want to grow up to be like you. You have no idea the influence you have.
Sure.
Until you see it, and you know, I want to be able to face my maker someday and know that I did the right stuff for and to people. So that's the idea on that. Anyway, Pete shows up, and his plane shows up, and here I am in LAX with the crisscross rainbows. Looks like a double, like a McDonald's, you know, that went wrong. And I'm waiting out there, and the whole plane empties out, and no Pete. And Desi's sitting there wondering, and all of a sudden, one of the pretty, you know, whatever you call the girls, stewardesses, comes out and says, "Are you Desi?" "Yeah, that's me. You better come on board." And I come on board, and Pete is working it as usual. He's in the very back row. He's got 3 or 4 of these beautiful stewardesses on his lap. "Desi, is that you? Oh, I can't breathe. I'm hyperventilating. Oh, he's working it. So I come on, Pete, come on. I come and get him. And I figured he had just taken the $200 for the, you know, sold my Continental plane flight ticket or whatever to get some more, whatever he'd like to do. But he was there, and he came out, and we had a great freaking time. And St. Valentine went on for a little while more. But Pete and I, during that phase, wrote All I Want, which was on DeMaul's first record. And a couple other tracks so that kind of was the impetus of it. Anyway, all I was getting at was Jonni said to me, "Don't be afraid to tell the whole story." And the whole story is, I think Desi started the West Coast glam movement. I'd like to hear from somebody that says to the contrary. But that was like 1981, and I don't think anybody was prettying it up at that time. Then I had kind of family tragedy. My father got sick. I came back to Chicago and took after he died, and I looked after the family business for a while. And I had met a kid in Los Angeles at a place called Mario's, which is sort of down near UCLA in Westwood.
Who owns that place?
And Mario's? I don't know. I think it's this Mario. It's a guy named Mario, right?
Mario owns Mario's? Okay.
Yeah, and they got these wine bottles hanging. And anyway, there's a kid at the time by the name of Billy DePaul, and he was about 16. And I met him, and he had a striped shirt on, and he looked like he wanted to be somebody someday. And you can see it in somebody's eyes. Now, sometimes I'm serious, sometimes I'm less serious. Right now, I'm very serious. You can see the look when somebody is hungry and wants to do it. You can see this person is going to make it, hook or crook. And he had that glint in his eye. He was young, he was unseasoned, but I thought, I'm going to file this guy away. I think he might do something someday. So now it's 2 or 3 years later. I'm in Chicago. I got the family business wrapped up. I got my sisters through college, and all closed out the estate and got all that stuff going. And all of a sudden, I get a phone call from this guy, Billy DePaul. And now he's about 19. And he says to me, "Hey, Des, you remember me on blah, blah, blah?" I said, "Yeah, Mario's, blah, blah, Westwood, all that, you know." See, here's the thing, guys. Can I tell you a little online secret?
Please do.
CMS exclusive.
Okay. Yes, it is. Desi has never had a cigarette, a pill, a whiff, a puff, a snort, nothing. Not a beer, nothing. I have been stone cold sober my entire life. Yeah.
Why?
And because of that, you want the truth?
True.
Or you want something that sounds glitzy and fun? What do you want?
Born again Christian?
The truth? No, you want a good story. You want the truth.
The truth.
I got a good story.
Chris wants a good story, and Neely wants the truth. So what do I got to do here?
A good true story.
Okay, a good true story. Both my folks were alcoholics. When I was about 11 years old, my dad had 2 father-son talks with me. The first one, and I remember he stopped drinking when I was 4 years old. He was a maniac before that, and I remember how things were. I was 11 years old. He sat me down. I had a girlfriend named Phyllis Kantorski. She had a boyfriend that was 17 years old. He joined the Navy, and when he jumped from shore to ship, he got cut in half between the, what do you call that, ramp that goes up there? It was a brutal story.
The gangplank.
She was real cute. Yeah, the gangplank. That's it, the gangplank. So he got cut in half, and she was like a widow before she ever got married. She wasn't very old, but she was just as cute as could be. And her mother, Nellie, was the maid for Billy O'Toole, who was my drummer. I had a two-piece band way before White Stripes.
Wait a minute, your drummer had a maid?
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
he did. His dad was, his father was a restaurateur, O'Toole's, And so this guy and I met, I think we were stealing a car together or something, or hubcaps or whatever, and as we're running away from the cops, what do? I play drums. Oh, yeah, I sing and play guitar. Oh, great. So we had a two-piece band. We'd play ice arenas and little 10-year-old chicks going crazy. It was fun. At any rate, Phyllis became my girlfriend, and never kissed her or anything, but it was a serious 5th or 6th grade thing or whatever it was, And so my dad sits me down. I'm like 11 years old, and we have exactly two father-son talks my whole life, and this was the first one. And he sat me down. You got to put it in context. My dad was a Notre Dame cum laude grad. He was an English major and Japanese colonel and German lieutenant or whatever he was. But anyway, he's an English major. And he said, okay, we're going to learn how to conjugate. When I would get in trouble as a kid, my dad never put a hand on me. He would have me do things like write 500 words on the Gutenberg press or write 500 words on Prudence or whatever. And so I ended up smarter than I should have with a lot of headaches, but, no butt aches. So he says, okay, we're going to learn to conjugate tonight. I laid Phyllis. I'm going to lay Phyllis. And I was like, Dad, stop. Oh, I was completely grossed out. Who wants to talk sex at 11, right? So that was the end of my first father-son talk. The second one, he sits me down, looks me in the eye. It was about 6 months later, and he says, Des, here's the thing. This is the south side of Chicago. You're Irish. And if you haven't yet, or if your friends haven't yet, rather, they're going to start drinking pretty soon. And he was right. Bobby and Jack Thompson, my dear friends, who were in 5th and 6th grade, and they were already getting lit regularly. And he said, I just want you to know, and now this is serious, and we're going to get back to rock and roll. He said, I just want you to know, when you have your first drink, you're going to like it a lot more than any of your friends do.
Right.
And I just about crapped my pants. This is way before any of this stuff about genetic predisposition to tendencies and all that stuff. And I remembered the mania and all that stuff, and I said to myself, I'm never doing it. And I never have. So that's that.
Wow.
Anyway, it's given me a clear memory, so I remember things like the 3 Peggies that I went to school with in 2nd grade and all that kind of stuff. So these stories come back pretty easily. So let's move on. Here we are in L.A.
Well, wait a minute. What happened to Phyllis?
What happened to what now?
What happened to Phyllis?
Phyllis?
What happened to her?
I don't know, man. Who knows? I can't listen. We got to keep the semi-PG. We got to move on. Valerie Meister was the next one. So Phyllis was gone, and Valerie Meister was the next one. And from then on, it was no looking back for the Des. So now it's like, I don't know, 85 maybe, and Billy DePaul calls me up and wants to start a band. And he says, so anyway, Des, and he's like all of 18 now. He says, I need a singer for my band. You want to join? No, I thank you very much. I don't want to join. I don't want to join your band.
Was he still wearing the striped shirt though?
Yeah, he was. And that was one of the reasons I didn't want to join. It was the same shirt too. I mean, wash that sucker already, would you? Get a little tight and work it.
Well, that was his key to success, though.
It almost was. His key to success was when he agreed to be in my band, and we started putting it together. And at first, it was going to be called the Chicago Malls, like the New York Dolls.
Right.
And it was that little gangster twist of St. Valentine and all that kind of stuff. I remember Lizzie, backing up for a minute, with Lizzie Gray, I remember the US Festival, and Lizzie talked me out of whatever money I had left. He was going to get flyers printed, rent a helicopter, and drop them over the US Festival. So I give him the money, and he goes on a weekend bender and comes back, says, sorry, Des, the festival was great, but I never did get up in that helicopter. Right on, Lizzie. So
wow.
Anyway, later, Billy, he and Kamita should have hung. Anyway, he and so Billy DePaul called me. We started rehearsing, and right away I can see that this kid has got talent. I mean, real talent, songwriting talent, and he's a real good bass player. And he had a good look by then going. He had his hair long and black and jet black and all that, and we had to get rid of the striped shirt. But I thought, you put this kid in some high heels. You put this kid in high heels and a miniskirt, and he's going to be off and running. So
that's what I was thinking.
Don't you think the mini are the better, right?
That's the
micro
look.
Mini.
Well, that's why Hillary Clinton never wears mini skirts, because her balls would show.
Exactly. See, now that's the problem with being Hillary these days. But somebody had to have a set in the White House, and so now we know which way it rolled.
That's
So
right.
anyway, maybe mine are going to roll for that comment. If the government starts knocking on my door before the end of the interview, I'll jump out the back window and call you right back. Make sure to pick up if it's a 312 number. So anyway, my days of jumping fences are long behind me, I hope. My dress used to get caught on the top anyway, yeah. So here's this guy, Billy DePaul, and we started putting the band together. And there was another fella at the time, Scotty Davis, and he had a band at that time. He still does, called Diamond Rexx, and they've had a very good run in Chicago for years and years. And so he and I had a previous incarnation of St. Valentine, but he didn't want to leave Chicago at the time. He wanted to hang, and he was a young guy. There was a gal named Jackie Thorne. She was a real... she was a cool gal. She used to hang around the scene in Chicago, and she was dear friends with the guys in KISS back when Paul had the bandit makeup going and all that.
Yeah, Jackie Thorne, right?
Do you know that name?
I know Jackie.
Well, you can't know her anymore. She's dead, but did you know her for a while?
It must be a different one.
Okay. Anyway, Jackie was good friends, and so it's like, let's back up a couple of years and go back to about 82 or 3, and I'm still living in Los Angeles, and I get a phone call from her, and she says, Ace is out of KISS. And I never was a KISS fan, but I thought, what the heck? She says, see what you can do with it. And I knew a guy named Michael Japp, J-A-P-P. And if you ever look on Paul Stanley's solo record, take a look at the songwriting. You remember when they did those 4 records? You put the 4 of them together, their 4 faces.
Yeah, 1977.
Whatever it was. You look on the back of the Paul record, and you'll see that Michael Japp co-wrote one side entirely and one song on the other side. And Michael Japp was another songster like Pete Comita was. Michael probably sold 10 songs to KISS, but didn't get any songwriting credit. Pete finally, with Cheap Trick, had the common sense to keep... He said, no, I'll just take, X amount for this one, and I want some songwriting credit. And if you ever look, there's a movie called Heavy Metal. You know that one, right? Sammy Hagar, all that?
Sure. Cartoon.
So there's... Right, yeah, that's it. So there's a song, and I love when the spike hits the flower. That's really shocking. At any rate, in there, they've got that Corvette flying. By the way, Desi's still got a 60 Corvette going. And if you look at the songwriting credits of Reach Out by Cheap Trick, Reach Out and Take It. Remember, there's a Reach Out and Take It. Look at
Sounds
the songwriting
like
credit. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I do. Look at that song. He's not the only one with 1,000 voices. Look at that songwriting credit, and you will see Pete Comita. He's one song where he actually got credit with Cheap Trick. The knucklehead always took the money and blew it on fine sweaters and babes and all that, and taxi rides. He really should have gotten a license. It would have worked out better for him in the long run. Anyway, so here we are, and Michael Japp had the in with KISS, so he got me an audition. And I went in and auditioned for KISS at the time. 2,000 guys auditioned, and I was one of 3. He was down to 3 guys that he liked. Myself, a guy named Steve from Boston, and a guy named Vinny. Well, we'll leave his last name. But anyway, Vinny Vincent.
Well, I thought Eddie Van Halen was trying out for that gig.
Not a chance. So
what about C.C. DeVille?
Listen, Bruce Johannesson, he is my buddy. So when we used to play at the Troubadour, there was this little pimply-faced kid from Studio City with mousy brown hair. Desi, rock Desi, Desi. Hey, Bruce, what's up, Desi? So we go a little bit later, and he stole my whole freaking shtick while I'm in Chicago taking care of my dad's estate, changes his name to Cecil DeVille, joins up and gives them some direction, and Poison's off and running. In the meantime, Billy, of course, he's told you his whole story about, whatever, Baby Talks Dirty or whatever it is. Yeah. Anyway, a little bit later, we're mixing the second record. Boy, if somebody had to put a timeline on this thing, it would look like a heartbeat during a heart attack, wouldn't it? Anyway, Cecil jumps in. Cecil will defibrillate this baby quick, huh? Cecil jumps in the studio, and he listens, and he hears, the riff of My Life. Are you familiar with that song from our second record, My Life?
Yeah, I don't care anymore. This is my life.
No, off the Warped record.
Yes. And then we changed it a little bit. That's right. Yeah, I married the pretty girl. That's right. That's Billy. Anyway, not that Billy, the other one. So we got this riff. Does it sound a little bit like Unskinny Bop to you?
I always thought it was the same song.
So did I, except I never got any royalty checks.
Jesus.
So Cecil comes in the studio, and he says, "Oh, great riff. Could I steal that?" And, of course, Billy says, "Yeah, go ahead." And next thing I know, they get First Blood out, and they got Unskinny Bop out there, and we're sitting with nothing with my life. My buddy calls me up one time. His name is John Sains. And John has a brother, Ralph Sains. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, he's the lead singer of Metal School and Steel Panther.
Yeah. Guns.
Yeah.
Right.
Johnny said, "Yeah, that's it." So Johnny and I used to have a band way back, and Ralph was about 9 years old. He'd sit on the steps to the basement. John wouldn't allow him to come down all the way. And I would see that look. I'm telling you, I know the look. I saw the look in his eyes, and I thought, this kid is going to grow up and do something. Now he's got the Metal School.
Was he wearing a striped shirt at the time?
Everybody wears a striped shirt. Don't you know that?
Well, I thought the people who were successful and bound for success wears a striped shirt.
That it's true. It's true. I wore mine, but that was over at Cook County Jail. But you got to get those stripes going. 26 in California, babe. That was my hang.
Right.
At any rate, yeah, I went from that to Hollywood and Vine. So anyway, Hollywood and Divine. So Billy, we'll jump back up now. So now it's like, I don't know, 85 or whatever, and Billy DePaul and that whole thing. So we get the band going, and we've got Scotty, who changes his name to SS Priest, and which was kind of, by the way, a little another exclusive for you guys. He was a big fan of the Sweet. Did you like the Sweet? I loved him. Brian Connolly, loved him.
Sure, Fox on the Run. Yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. Yeah. Speaking of Ace Frehley, right? There.
Right.
So I go back to town. It's like 82. We jump back again. Another heart attack. And my friend Chip Zinoff, Chip had been in a band. Chip and I had a band called We're Staying. I don't know if you know that, but anyway, Chip, at one time, before he was Chip Zinoff, he was Chip St. Chocolate. And so Chip and myself had a band called We're Staying with a drummer named Zato Cruz and a guitar player named Bob McNaughton. It was a really, really good band. Within about a year, we had 80 original songs. We used to do 4. This is in the days when Chicago had better taste. For years, all they've liked is sort of tribute bands. But back in the day, they used to actually like when you had something original. And so Off-Broadway was doing their thing, and Robbie Harding would come out and watch us all the time. And so here we are doing 4 45-minute all-original sets. We would come out and do 4 45-minute sets, all original. We had matching outfits. We had choreography. It was like sort of like the Temptations meet the Beatles or something. It was pretty freaking cool. And time goes on, and I ended up out of that band, and I was replaced, as fate would have it, by Rob Harding from Off-Broadway, who had broken up or taken a little break or something. And so I come out to L.A., and I'm doing this thing, and I do this audition for KISS, and we're down to 3 of us that they're trying to decide from. Now, Gene Simmons is the world's coolest guy. He didn't want to eat at the taste. No, Des. You have the blueberry cobbler. I got to watch my weight, And Gene is forever business. And at that time, I don't know if you've heard stories, but Gene and Paul love each other and hate each other from time to time,
What?
And at that time, they didn't get along very well. So Gene was in Studio D at the record plant, and Paul was in Studio C, and they were each making their 5 songs that were going to become that next KISS record. So Michael Japp, the guy that I alluded to earlier, got me the audition. I go down there, and Gene says, "Okay, but I like your look. Everything's good here. It's going to be fine. Here's going to be new makeup. Go on in there and play." And so I'm playing to the song, and he goes, "I like it. It's very good. It's very good. Hold on." And he calls, and he has Paul come in, and I can see that they're shooting daggers at each other, but Paul's got his look together, and he's got his little tattoo on his arm. And, "Hey, Desi, nice to meet you." And they were both dear friends of Jackie Thorne, and Jackie, in the day, had told him, "Paul, I don't like the makeup." So, "You don't like the makeup?" No. And so I think she may have had something to do with that star. Now, whether she said you need a star, I don't know, but I know she said it does. A bandit look is not going to work for you. It's not happening. So she was a real cool gal, and I'm sorry she's dead, but she used to have a real good sense of what might work and who had that spark. And she said, there's a band, Diamond Rex, the band I can do with or without, but the guitar player is somebody you really should get to know. So I did. And Scotty and I, as I said, kind of worked on a bit of a St. Valentine thing, and then he had to stay. I had to go back to L.A., and my dad died, came back. Billy DePaul and I get together, and I said, I got just the right guitar player, and we pull Scotty. And so it's the three of us, and we had a drummer called, at that time, Billy Bash, and this guy was Jim Bashaw, and he was a drummer for a band called, I think they were called Daisy Chain, and and they had a little thing they did, and that worked out nice for them. And anyway, good luck to everybody. But this is the Desi Rexx show right now, so sorry, back to me.
Please continue.
Okay. Yeah,
we got plenty of time.
Well, when I start thinking of things to say, I'll get rolling here. So, so Billy DePaul says to me, "What?" He says, "I don't think Billy DePaul is a very good name for me." And I said, "I don't think it's a very good name for you either." You know, he says, "Scotty's going to be SS Priest. You're going to be Desi Rexx. What should I do? What should I do?" So you got to back up just a little bit. And in St. Valentine, if you try and find where Desi Rexx was in St. Valentine, you might have a hard time, but it'd be easier if you found Desi Valentine in St. Valentine. And so he said, yeah, there you go. So he says, so you're not going to use the Valentine thing anymore. Would it be cool if I did? I said, absolutely. But I said, Billy Valentine? He says, no. What's that guy you used to work with? I said, Lizzie Gray? He goes, yeah. I said, Gray Valentine? He goes, no, Lizzie Valentine. I said, I like it. It's a great idea. Let's go with it. So that night, he was born Lizzie Valentine and never looked back. So he's always been, I'm telling you, the kid always wanted to make it, always had stars in his eyes, was always a great songwriter, a co-songwriter. I've heard a couple things he did, like complete songs, and they need a little touch. But when he gets in and we kind of mix it up together, he was a good first wife. I'll tell you, I miss him at times, but we don't see eye to eye on so many things that just is. That's how that is. So at some point,
that's how you moved to Utah.
Yes, exactly. That's how I moved to the T of Utah. So now you've got the U and the T, and we're getting on to the awe part now.
All right.
By the way, I'm wearing a Utah Jazz shirt the other day, and I'm shaving, and I look in there, and did you know that backward Utah is Hatu? Did you know that?
You're kidding.
Yeah, when you're shaving and you got a Utah Jazz shirt, it goes Zaj Hatu. It sounds like you're sneezing in some other language, doesn't it? Like on some island?
Yeah, God bless you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. He has. Hey, listen, did you know that Errol Flynn was actually Tasmanian, and when he tried to get over to England to be an actor, he was doing the nasty with he found his way in a jungle in freaking Tasmania somewhere. I was reading his book, My Wicked Wicked Ways, and I thought, when I grow up, I don't want to die when I'm his age, but it would be great to have some great stories, and I'm working on it. Anyway, Errol, as he's doing it with the chief's daughter, now he has to get out of town because, I don't know, something. And the chief is got blood in his eye, but Errol says, well, yeah, wait, let me show you this before they're like going to kill him. He had all sorts of interesting jobs. One of them was deballing sheep. He was neutering sheep. So it was a 3-man operation in those days in Tasmania. The first guy would take a pair of scissors and clean off the back end. The next guy would bite off, and then the third guy would take a hot stick and cauterize the sheep. Errol had job number 2.
So he's a ball biter.
Well, I wouldn't use that term exactly, but I'll just say he had job number 2. Anyway, he works his way up from there. This is Errol Flynn, the swashbuckler of all time, right?
Wow.
He works his
and
way
he
up
bites nuts for a living.
Well, I understand there's a lot of protein there. Anyway, he gets it going with the king's daughter, and that's another thing. People put down the guy that sold Manhattan Island for like $12 worth of beads.
Jeez, why would they do that?
You know what? We think of him as being a sucker, right? But nobody's a sucker. Nobody gives an island away for nothing. He must have been like a triple gazillionaire in bead money in his little tribe. You got to put things in their proper perspective. You never know.
Maybe he owes a back bead tax.
Maybe he had when the 60s thing came in, the beads were going. Maybe his progeny had like a had like the rights on it or something, held the patent. Who knows? Anyway,
I don't know.
back to beads. I like beads that glitter and sparkle myself. Those are the ones that make the best dresses. So here we are. We got the band going. Billy DePaul, now Lizzie Valentine, sneaks in my old drummer, Billy McCarthy, who's decided to be Billy Dior at the time. And DeMals, was born. And so I'm a bit of a maniac for getting things just exactly right. We rehearsed the first year in Chicago 40 hours a week for a year before we did our first show. So now we're getting ready to do the first show, and the only thing I can drum up, I've got to tell them, a couple of years ago I was hot stuff in L.A., and they're like going, well, that's L.A., this is Chicago, and we don't know who you are, we don't know who DeMals is. What we'll do is we'll give you a show with a lingerie runway act. You guys can headline. And I thought, you know what, okay. And it was at a place called Excalibur. Before they were Excalibur, they were called The Limelight. And we did a third record called Beyond the Valley of DeMals, and there's a song in there called The Limelight. And that is a tip of the hat to that show. So we're rehearsed up, we're ready to go. Nobody knows who we are. We get $200 guarantee for this show on a Tuesday night, 10:30 at The Limelight. And it was an important thing because these were kind of younger guys, and we're about to go to Los Angeles on Thursday, 2 days later, and we're going to be rich and famous. In the meantime, I rented a billboard on the Strip right next to the Roxy. I've got at that point, about $20K of my money in it, in like mid-'80s money. That's a lot of scratch at the time, I must tell you, my lads.
Wow.
And I got it all rolling on these guys, and Scotty's got some stage experience with Diamond Rexx, and Billy a little bit. But Lizzie, not too much.
No.
And so I want to see this thing. I want to see this thing go well, right? So I figure if we get one good show under our belts that we can laugh about on the way out to LA, we get out there, and I'm going to roll the dice on this because the guys are great players. It's going to be a good thing. The gimmick was great, matchless. It was unbelievable. So we'd have black guys, bouncers with like big flashlights. Get out of the way, DeMals coming through, and we got like. Black satin robes with the name in the back and glitter, and underneath we were decked out like Fredericks of Hollywood wishes they could look. And so we're ready to do this show, and we got the limo going. I got the guys, and we're in the... I forgot something really critical. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So it's Tuesday night. We're going to do this show, and the point of it is we did one show in Chicago, then we moved to Los Angeles and did one show, and then signed a 7-record deal with Atlantic Records. But you got to hear the why of it and the how of it and all that, and that's the story here. So here it is. We've rehearsed for a year. It's so perfect and just tight. Everything is precise. It's just a great act, ready to go and become rich and famous, right? Mm-hmm. Here we are. It's Chicago. We're a couple of nights before the show, and Lizzie calls me up and he says, "Are you sitting down?" "No." "Sit down." "Okay." Scotty's not going with us to Los Angeles.
You're kidding.
I said, what? No. He made the first Diamond Rexx record, and his manager said if he goes to Los Angeles with DeMals, he's going to wipe all his tracks off and have another guitar player come in and replace it. And he's just been in the band for so long, and he was going to walk away from Diamond Rexx, but he at least wanted that one. I think it was Land of the Damned, that first one. He wanted that record. He wanted that. I get it. I mean, I get it. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, so you're leaving your first wife, but you're not going to leave your kids, especially when there's only one. And so I get it. So Scotty was out, and it's like Friday, or it's a week before we're leaving, or something like that. And I said, okay, well, let me just process that. He said, don't process anything. Meet me at the rehearsal studio. Okay. So I go down there, and I'm in shock. Mm-hmm. And Lizzie walks in with a kid who's got his hair about 12 feet tall, must have had 3 cans of Aquanet to get it there. He's the best-looking human being, the prettiest-looking male I have ever seen in my life.
Sexy.
And at the time, the kid's name, unbelievable. Sean Freehill is his name. So he walks in, and I said to Lizzie right away, I look at the kid and I go, okay, I get it. He looks the part. And before I can say anything, Sean says, I've got 3 answers before you ask the questions. Yes, I know the whole set. That's one.
Okay.
Yes, I don't mind you using the posters, the 5,000 posters you had printed up with Scotty on there. I don't mind being called SS Priest, changing my name to SS Priest. And I can leave next Thursday for Hollywood. What else did you want to ask me, Des? I said, nothing. Let's plug in and see if you can play. And he was so good. Oh, my gosh. He was like a little Randy Rhoads and looked great. And he'd go on stage with a little gold M8 jockstrap and a chiffon cape or whatever. I'd throw him up on my shoulders and wonder what I had to do with my, my own cape in the way of washing it afterward. But we were doing the deal, and it was great. So we get ready. We have one rehearsal. And now it's Friday night, and we decide to go hang out and see if Sean can hang with the big boys. Well, Billy Dior can drink my sister under the table, and that's saying a lot.
Wow.
And we go out. We decide to hang out at a place called Ed DeBevick's. Is that still Does that still exist down there or no?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, it was kind of a knockoff of a 50s diner, and it was down near sort of the Rush Street area, a little bit north of there, a little bit west of there. And it was a cool place. They had the chicks with the bubble gum popping, and what do you want? They'd insult you, kind of like Musso and Franks in Hollywood. And so there you are. And at that time,
hold on, Desi. I hate to cut in on you, man, but we actually have another interview getting ready to start, man. Would it be okay if we play one of your tunes and call you back like on another show to continue this?
You see, you lied to me, didn't you? You said we could go till 2 a.m.
Well, I didn't think you were really going to take me up on it.
Well, should I not next time, or should we pick up with part 2? What do you want?
We'll pick up right from here, and next time I will leave 3 hours wide open.
Well, here's what we're going to do. Right now, we're going to pick up right in the middle of it. I'm going to tell you how to spell Mississippi. M-I-S-S-I-S-S-I.
He hung up on himself.
Holy smokes.
Wow.
Love him.
Can't wait to have him back. I don't think I've ever experienced anything like that.
I've only had it once, and it was with Gene Simmons, where Gene just took off.
Wow.
That was fantastic.
Wow.
I love it.
And poof, he was gone.
I love it.
And I didn't hang up on him. He just went click. Well,
I'm just going to say it now. That was the greatest interview in the history of the show.
That could have filled a book easily.
That was, to be honest, tremendous, right?
It was. It's just lunacy untethered.
Steve Wall in the chat room, call the cops. Fantastic.
Wow. Well, I need a break.
We got that other interview coming.
Yeah, I need a break. But there was a third song that we haven't played yet from Rexx. Right. So we'll play this. We'll play another tune. We'll come back and get into it. But anyway, Desi Rexx.
Interview. Before this next interview.
Yeah, exactly. All I can say is wow.
Fantastic.
Wow.
Well, that should make cutting the podcast a little bit easier.
Exactly.
Jesus.
No kidding. All right. I think this song speaks for itself.
Okay.
And you're not going to believe it when I tell you what the title is.
What?
This one is a new Rexx song.
Okay.
And in light of everything we just heard.
Yeah.
And this is no lie.
Okay.
This is called Shock Treatment.
Whoa.
Now, this is the first time play right here on your Classic Metal Show.